The missing Mandalorian Grogu sat alone at their quiet little camp, a half-eaten frog burger steaming beside him. Normally he would have devoured it in seconds. It was his favorite, but tonight he had no appetite. His ears drooped, and his big eyes stared into the trees, hoping to hear the hum of Mando's ship returning. But it was silent. Too silent. The Mandalorian had gone off on a solo hunt 3 nights ago, promising to be back before sunset the next day. He wasn't, and Grogu could feel something was wrong. Worried, Grogu climbed into the Razor Crest's cobbled-together cockpit. The ship was still mostly wreckage from their last crash landing, but a few systems worked. He powered up Mando's old datapad and began scanning the mission logs. The last recorded entry was a bounty file marked classified, but Grogu bypassed the lock with ease. The target was ... Bigfoot. Grogu tilted his head. He'd heard the stories. Giant, ancient, impossible to track. Rumors said the Empire had once tried to capture one but failed violently. Mando's note under the file read, "Others tried. Didn't return. I will." Driven by worry, Grogu grabbed his cloak, his tiny lightsaber, and set out toward the northern wilds, where the tracker last pinged. The deeper he ventured into the forest, the more unnatural it felt. Branches snapped behind him. The trees whispered things. After 2 days of searching, Grogu found the first sign. A dented Mandalorian gauntlet, half buried in shitstand leaves. His breath caught. Then he saw it, a giant footprint, easily the size of the Razor Crest's cockpit. Panic rose in his chest. Had Bigfoot eaten man? Fueled by fear and fury, Grogu followed the tracks until he reached a cave, carved into the mountainside like a scar. Inside, bones littered the ground. Not just animal. Some war fragments of Mandalorian armor. At the center lay a familiar helmet. Grogu froze. Mando. No, it couldn't be. A monstrous growl echoed through the cave, and out of the darkness stepped Bigfoot, towering, covered in dark matted fur, eyes burning like coals. Grogu ignited his lightsaber and stood his ground, but the creature moved fast. Impossibly fast. With a swipe of its arm, Grogu was sent flying against the wall. He barely had time to recover before the beast lunged again, pinning him. Grogu reached for the Force, pushing as hard as he could, but Bigfoot held strong, lifting him toward its gaping maw. It was going to be dinner, until a blaster shot rang out and seared into Bigfoot's shoulder, sending it roaring in pain. From the cave entrance, a figure emerged in silhouette. Shiny Beskar glinted in the torchlight. Grogu's eyes widened. Mando. The Mandalorian stepped forward, rifle smoking, armor scuffed and dirty but intact. "Miss me," he said. Grogu squeaked, relief flooding him. Mando fired again, driving Bigfoot back. "That wasn't my helmet," he said. "It belonged to an old friend. Another hunter. He took the mission before I did. Disappeared. Now I know why." Grogu glanced at the broken armor on the ground. A wave of realization hit. Bigfoot hadn't killed Mando, but it had killed others. The beast snarled and charged. Mando tossed Grogu a shock grenade, and together they fought, Grogu flipping through the air with force-enhanced jumps, Mando laying down cover fire with his blaster. It took everything they had. Grogu distracted the creature long enough for Mando to plant a thermal detonator on its back. With a final thunderous roar, the explosion sent Bigfoot crashing to the ground in a heap of smoke and ash. As silence returned to the forest, Mando sat down, pulling off his helmet to catch his breath. Grogu plopped beside him and finally took a bite of his cold frog burger. "Next time," Grogu said with his eyes. "You're not going alone." Mando chuckled, ruffling his ears. "Deal." But deep in the cave, a low growl echoed, not from the fallen beast, but something else, something bigger. Grogu. Shadows of the deep. Grogu sat near the dying embers of their campfire, staring into the darkness beyond the trees. Mando rested nearby, one arm over his chest, armor scorched and dented from their battle with Bigfoot. The creature's remains had long since cooled inside the collapsed cave, but the air still felt heavy, like the forest itself was holding its breath. Grogu's frog burger remained untouched again. Something deep inside told him this wasn't over. The ground trembled slightly beneath him. Not an earthquake, a pulse, rhythmic, deliberate. Grogu tilted his head. The vibrations were coming from beneath the mountain, deeper than the cave they'd sealed. He climbed quietly to his feet and approached the rocky debris, placing a small hand against the surface. A vision flashed through his mind. Dark corridors, enormous stone gates, and something behind them, something ancient. His eyes snapped open. The Bigfoot hadn't just been a beast, it had been a guardian. The next morning, Mando awoke to find Grogu already prepping supplies. "You're not still thinking about the cave," he grumbled, sitting up slowly. Grogu blinked at him, then floated the Mandalorian helmet over with the Force, and inside, a small blinking beacon. Mando raised an eyebrow. "That wasn't there yesterday." Grogu nodded solemnly. Someone or something had activated it after the beast's death, and it was sending a signal. They followed the coordinates across the perimeter, a long-forgotten region where even bounty hunters refused to go. After days of traveling through abandoned settlements and decayed temples, they arrived at a ruined listening station from the Clone Wars era. Inside, the signal pointed downward far below the surface. A hidden turbolift creaked to life and took them deep underground. As the doors opened, they stepped into a chamber unlike any they had seen before. Walls carved with symbols glowing in strange pulsing light, Mandalorian sigils, Jedi runes, and something older from the shadows. A figure emerged, tall, cloaked with crimson cybernetic eyes. Mando instinctively raised his weapon, but the figure raised a hand. "I mean you no harm," the voice rasped. "I've been watching." The stranger revealed himself as Kel Dravos, a former Sith archaeologist exiled after the fall of the Empire. He claimed the Bigfoot creature was not unique. It was one of many remnants of a lost race bred for war during the early Sith Jedi Wars. They were sealed behind the gate of Kator, he said, pointing to a massive stone door at the far end of the chamber. But now the gate is waking. Grogu stepped toward the door. He could feel it, not through the Force, but against it. A void, hungry and cold. "This place exists between the Force and the void," Kel whispered. "Even Jedi couldn't sense it. That's why it was chosen as a prison." The beacon, Kel explained, had been activated by someone outside this world. A dark power intent on opening the gate and unleashing the ancient army once more. "They will come," he said. "And if they do, not even the Mandalorians will survive." Suddenly, alarms blared from deeper within the ruins. Mando and Grogu rushed toward the noise, weapons ready. In the central chamber, a team of off-world raiders, mercenaries with old Imperial patches, were placing explosive charges around the gate. "They're trying to blow it open," Mando shouted. Grogu leaped into action, flipping through the air, disarming one of the raiders with a flick of his hand. Mando fired precise shots, taking out two more, but it was too late. The detonator was already set. The explosion rocked the chamber, sending them flying. Dust filled the air as the great stone door cracked, revealing a sliver of darkness beyond. Not just shadow, but living shadow. A massive clawed hand reached through the gap. The gate was opening. Grogu, battered but conscious, looked up at Mando. There was only one option left. "We have to seal it," Mando said. "From the inside." Kel objected. "Anyone who enters won't return." Grogu stepped forward anyway, face solemn, but Mando placed a hand on his shoulder. "Not alone," he said. "We do this together." As the void widened, Grogu used the Force to stabilize the structure, while Mando pushed a seismic charge into the breach. The creature inside howled in fury as light poured through the crack, real light, burning it back. In a final, brilliant flash, the gate imploded, the shock wave knocking everyone to the ground. When the dust cleared, the gate was sealed once more, this time permanently. No claw, no shadow, only silence. Back at the surface, as the twin suns rose, Mando and Grogu sat by their campfire once more. This time Grogu finally ate his frog burger, though he kept glancing at the horizon. "You okay, kid?" Mando asked. Grogu looked at him, then up at the stars. The darkness was gone. "For now," Grogu echoes. Beyond the gate, weeks had passed since the gate of Kator had been sealed. On the surface, the galaxy was calm again. The nights were quiet. The shadows no longer moved when they shouldn't, but Grogu wasn't sleeping. Each time he closed his eyes, the same vision returned. A massive starless sky, a bleeding red moon, and a voice. Not words, not language, just presence. Cold, watching, waiting. Mando noticed it too. Grogu didn't eat as much. He barely played with the little knob from the Razor Crest S control stick, something that had once never left his hand. They traveled quietly from one system to another, hoping a change of scenery might bring peace. But the nightmares only grew stronger. One morning, Grogu reached for Mando's map and pointed at a planet neither of them recognized. Uncharted, no name, just ... pulling. They arrived after days of travel. The world was lifeless, a gray rock hanging at the edge of a dead system. No cities, no signals. But Grogu knew this was where the real darkness had come from. Not the creatures, not the gate, something deeper. Beneath the surface, scanners detected a vast structure. Buried, ancient, dormant. Mando wanted to turn back. "We already sealed the gate," he said. This is different." Grogu simply looked at him. No words, just that same still, determined silence. They descended into the depths, through collapsed tunnels and forgotten ruins, until they reached a chamber unlike anything they had ever seen, not built by any known civilization. The walls shimmered like oil. Time felt slower here. Grogu reached out, and the chamber responded, lighting up with symbols that bent and twisted as he moved. The Force felt strange, like it was being watched. Then, the voice came again, clearer now. "You should not have sealed the gate." Mando raised his blaster. "Who's there?" No answer, only shifting air. Grogu stepped forward, placing his hand on a crystal in the center of the chamber. Visions surged into his mind, images of other children like him trapped in stasis, rows of them, floating in darkness. And a machine, ancient, massive, draining something from them. Not blood, not life, something older. Grogu collapsed to the floor, gasping. His strength was leaving him. Mando ran to him, pulling him away. And in that moment, the entire chamber began to shift. Machinery awoke. Hidden doors opened, and a single figure stepped forward. Not a Sith, not a Jedi, something else. A Void Walker, part of the ancient race that once tried to rewrite the Force itself, not with balance, but with absence. "He is the key," the the figure said, pointing at Groku. One of the last who sealed the gate, but left the door open. They fought Mando using everything he had. Grogu weakened but trying to assist. The Void Walker was strong, its body shifting in and out of form, impervious to normal weapons. Grogu, summoning every ounce of will, reached out with the Force, but instead of pushing, he pulled something in, a fragment of memory, a pulse of light. The chamber responded, reacting to him. The crystal lit up, and the entire ruin began to collapse. They escaped just in time, carried upward by a surge of energy Grogu couldn't control, only guide. The surface cracked behind them. The ancient structure vanished into dust. The dark moon above split in two. Back aboard the ship, Mando patched up Grogu in silence. That wasn't a gate, he said finally. It was a prison. Grogu nodded slowly. He had felt it too. And worse, he had seen others like him still trapped. And somewhere far beyond the stars, something had noticed him. Grogu, the last of his kind. Mando stood at the ship's controls, watching hyperspace blur past them. Behind him, Grogu sat in silence, staring at his reflection in the cockpit window. He hadn't spoken, not with words, not even with the Force, since they'd escaped the buried ruins. The memory of the children in stasis still haunted him. Not clones, not captives. Others like him. Mando tried to break the silence. You think they're still out there? Grogu didn't answer, but his gaze shifted not to the stars, but to a small beacon he had carved into the dashboard, a symbol he'd seen in the visions. A swirling pattern of stars, surrounding a single dark sun. He didn't know what it meant, but he knew where it led. They jumped to a forgotten sector, long erased from most maps, a void known as the Murmuring Expanse, where navigational systems failed and ships rarely returned. The moment they entered, the Force rippled. Grogu sat up straighter. The silence was gone. Whispers were everywhere now. Not evil, not good, just ... old, watching, testing. Deep within the expanse, they found a shattered world orbiting a dying white star. It wasn't listed in any database. As they descended, Grogu's body tensed. This place wasn't unknown to him. It was familiar, a home he had never seen. A temple that wasn't Jedi nor Sith, something older. The ruins were built of obsidian-like stone, humming faintly with power. In the center stood a pedestal, and resting on it, a mask, not a weapon, a memory. Grogu stepped forward and touched it. His mind was flooded with light. He saw beings like him, tall, regal, powerful, not warriors, not masters, but weavers of the Force. They didn't command it like the Jedi or twist it like the Sith. They sang with it, balanced it, protected it, but something had hunted them. Something that fed on the Force itself. The Void. One by one they had been wiped out, their children hidden across the stars, Grogu among them. He gasped as he snapped back to reality, stumbling into Mando's arms. "Kid, you okay?" Grogu looked up at him, and for the first time in days, spoke through the Force. "I'm not the last, but I'm the only one awake." But before Mando could respond, alarms blared on the ship. A massive structure was emerging from beneath the planet's surface, not a temple. A ship, ancient, monstrous, and alive. It had been waiting, not for them. For Grogu. The structure rose into the sky, cracking the world open around it, and from it, a transmission echoed across space, on every known frequency. "The Force has forgotten us. But we remember. We are coming." Back aboard their vessel, Mando and Grogu barely escaped the planet's collapse. As they blasted into orbit, the structure broke atmosphere. Not just a ship, but a fleet, long buried, now awakening, and across the galaxy, Force-sensitive beings, Jedi, Sith, exiles, even Inquisitors, felt it. The balance had shifted. Grogu sat in silence, then turned to Mando. "We have to find the others, before they do." To be continued. Grogu, the hidden choir. The stars outside the cockpit spun slowly as Mando made course corrections. They were following a trail now, one that wasn't visible to scanners or nav charts, but only through the Force. Grogu could feel it. A soft, steady pull, like a note being held across the galaxy. Somewhere out there, others like him still lived. If they were to survive what was coming, they needed to be awakened. Their first destination was a remote gas giant called Namaros, home to a rogue order known as the Whispers of Ash, exiles who had once studied Jedi teachings but broke away to follow visions only they could hear. They were feared across the Midrim for their strange powers and stranger rituals. Grogu felt one of the echoes here, distant, faint, but alive. The moment they landed on the mist-covered surface of Namaros's only moon, Grogu sensed it. One of his kind had passed through here long ago, maybe even been raised here. The Ash priests greeted them cautiously, until Grogu stepped forward. The eldest priest stared into his eyes for a long, silent moment, then bowed. "You carry the song," she said. "But the choir sleeps." The choir. That's what they called Grogu's people. Not warriors, not Jedi. Harmonic forcebinders attuned to the flow of all living things. A myth to most, a warning to others. And now, the priests revealed, one remained in stasis beneath their temple, guarded for centuries, awaiting the day one of their kind would come to wake her. Her name was Lyra, and when they broke the seal on her chamber, the entire moon trembled. Suspended in a crystal of frozen force light, her form was taller than Grogu's, older not in years, but in lineage. She had never opened her eyes since the Great Silence. Until now. The moment Grogu stepped forward, the crystal cracked. She collapsed into his arms, breathing heavily, eyes wild. "They're here," she whispered. "They know we've awakened." Before they could ask what she meant, alarms sounded. Ships were descending from the clouds. Dark, sleek, humming with unnatural energy. The Void-born elite hunters bred in the shadow of the ancient force-consuming race. Mando grabbed his blaster. Grogu lit his lightsaber. Lyra, still weak, sang a note, not with her voice but with the force. The ground responded. The air bent. The Ash Priests joined them. The battle was fierce. The Void-born moved like shadows, immune to many force attacks. But Lyra and Grogu combined their power, not to destroy, but to unbind. They disrupted the invaders' connection to the Void, unraveling their control. Mando took out their leader with a close-range explosive, sealing the temple again. After the battle, Lyra looked up at the stars. "There are more of us," she said. "Scattered. Sleeping. Some ... taken." She turned to Grogu. "You are the only one born after the silence. You are the bridge. They will come for you first." Grogu didn't flinch. He looked at Mando, who nodded. "We find the others," Mando said, "before the Void does." And so, the journey continued. To be continued. Grogu, the taken star, the choir was waking. But so was the Void. Grogu, Mando, and Lyra traveled from system to system, following echoes only Grogu could hear, faint force resonances left behind like musical notes in the fabric of space. Each new world brought strange remnants, cradles of forgotten energy, temples twisted in time, even one moon where the force no longer functioned at all. But the signs were clear. Someone was hunting down every trace of Grogu's kind, and erasing them. Their next lead brought them to the wreck of a starship orbiting a collapsed dwarf star, known in deep archive records as the Etherborn Ark. It was once a mobile sanctuary, a last refuge for the surviving members of the hidden choir. But when they boarded, it was empty, frozen, lifeless, except for one chamber. Inside, suspended in gravity stasis, was a youngling, the same species as Grogu, smaller than him, eyes closed, name unknown, but still alive. Grogu's heart raced as he approached. Lyra's hands trembled. "This one wasn't left behind," she whispered. "He was taken." Before they could release the child, the ship shifted. Lights flickered. A low tone vibrated through the hull, like breathing. Something had activated. Something was waiting. From the shadows emerged a figure, unlike anything they had faced. Tall, humanoid, clad in armor that shimmered like broken glass, pulsing with anti-force energy. Its face was a smooth, featureless plate, reflecting Grogu's gaze back at him. The creature spoke without speaking. "This star is ours now, and so is the seed." It lunged. Mando opened fire. Lyra unleashed a shockwave of harmonic energy. Grogu dove for the stasis pod, shielding the child with the force as debris rained around them. The creature moved like it didn't obey gravity, or time. It struck Lyra hard, knocking her against the far wall. Her song broke, cut off mid-note. Grogu screamed. Not in fear, in fury. The force around him collapsed inward. He didn't push, he didn't pull. He bent the field, twisted the space between them into a spiral of raw will. The creature staggered, armor cracking. Mando threw a detonator at its chest, and Grogu folded the explosion inward, compressing it into a single point of light, and released it. Silence returned, but Lyra didn't rise. Grogu ran to her side, her eyes fluttered open once more. "The boy," she whispered weak. "The Void took the choir's future. You must protect what's left." Her hand gripped his. "You're not just the last. You're the first of something new." She faded, her body dissolving into light. Grogu held her pendant, a harmonic crystal, and placed it beside the rescued child S-Pod. Mando put a hand on his shoulder. "We'll keep him safe. Just like I did for you." Grogu nodded slowly, but his eyes had changed. There was sorrow there, and something deeper, resolved. They left the shattered ark behind, carrying the child and the crystal. As the stars wheeled around them, Grogu whispered one word into the force, one that echoed across the choir's forgotten melody. "Awaken." Groku, the choir reborn. Aboard the ship, silence hung thick in the air, heavier than any starship vacuum. Grogu cradled the rescued child close, his small fingers brushing the harmonic crystal that once belonged to Lyra. The crystal pulsed softly, an echo of the lost choir's song, fragile but persistent. Mando watched quietly, feeling the weight of everything they'd faced settle deep in his bones. This was no longer just about survival, it was about rebirth. Their course was set toward the legendary world of Eldros Prime, a forgotten sanctuary set to cradle the last remnants of the ancient Force Weavers. The journey was long, fraught with uncertainty and worse, the creeping presence of the Void-born hunters, who stalked their every move like shadows in hyperspace. Grogu felt the dark tendrils of the Void tightening around them, trying to suffocate the very light of the choir's hope. As they approached Eldros Prime, the planet revealed itself beneath thick violet clouds and jagged crystal forests shimmering under twin suns. The air buzzed with raw energy, both welcoming and dangerous. Grogu stepped onto the soil with purpose, the child still swaddled in his arms. The harmonic crystal guided them like a beacon, drawing them toward the ancient temple at the planet's heart. The temple was a masterpiece of stone and light, carved in spirals that seemed to breathe with the force itself. Inside, the air thrummed with energy old and powerful, yet scarred by battles long past. Grogu placed the crystal on a pedestal etched with ancient runes, and the temple responded, walls glowing with patterns that danced like living music. The sanctuary was awakening. Suddenly, the ground trembled. The Voidborn fleet appeared overhead, dark vessels blotting out the suns. They unleashed torrents of energy, raining destruction upon the planet. Mando fired from the ship's ramp, taking out enemy fighters, while Grogu chanted a low harmonic note that rippled through the force, shielding the temple from the worst of the assault. Inside the sanctuary, Grogu began the ancient ritual taught by Lyra, weaving of light, sound, and the force meant to awaken the slumbering choir. He reached out with his mind, touching the crystal, the child, and the ancient stones. A chorus of voices echoed through his thoughts, the long-lost weavers responding to his call, stirring from stasis, their spirits knitting together across the stars. But the Voidborn were relentless. Their leader, the shattered glass armored figure, emerged in a massive assault carrier, descending onto the temple's spire. Grogu faced him, sword ignited, while Mando covered their retreat. The battle was fierce, each strike Grogu made rippling through the air with harmonic resonance, each counter by the Voidborn shattering reality like fractured glass. In a moment of desperation, the Voidborn commander unleashed a devastating wave of anti-force energy meant to erase Grogu's very existence. But the choir's song surged back, stronger than ever. Grogu the child and the harmonic crystal became one, channeling the ancient power of their ancestors. Light exploded outward in a pulse that shattered the Voidborn's dark ship, sending ripples through the battlefield. The remaining Voidborn retreated into the shadows of space, defeated but not destroyed. Grogu looked to the horizon, knowing this war was far from over. But the choir had been reborn. With Lyra's sacrifice and the child's protection, they had taken their first step toward restoring balance. Mando clasped Grogu's shoulder. "You've got a long road ahead, kid." Grogu smiled softly, eyes shining with newfound strength. "I'm not just the last," he whispered. "I'm the beginning." As Eldros Prime bathed in the light of its twin suns, the ancient song of the choir rose once more, a melody of hope, resilience, and the promise that even in the darkest times, the Force would never be silent. The end.